right, so hello and welcome. This is Dr. Sean Lordan with the PT's PT podcast. And today I've got guest Pete Barone, who is senior physical therapist at a professional PT in Woburn and does some pretty cool things over there. And Pete, without further ado, I'll kind of let you take the reins and talk about, your role at professional and, kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Sean, for having me. Always a pleasure talking to you. It's like I think we met, maybe it's got to be 10 years ago now, when we were just like younger PTs getting started, helping each other out. And then, we both kind of took off in our outpatient career world. So it's been good. A lot of learning experiences along the way, and, it just helping each other out and figuring out where to go from there. It's like, so right now, it's like throughout my career, we've done like a couple residencies, which I think are the best thing for a new PT to go through. It's like a great learning experience to have some other people bounce ideas off of, kind of give you guidance along the way, and really helpful for that.
Yeah, so talk to us more about the residencies that you've been through and about what you're doing right now.
So I've been through three residencies so far. One for the orthopedic clinical specialist, so board certified in orthopedics. The one IOMT, that one I speak very highly of. That was a year-long residency program where you fine-tune some of your manual skills, and then the fellowship program through BU. That was another year-long residency, which kind of just took what IOMT did and just accelerated it even more.
That's awesome. Now, would you have done it in the same order, Pete?
So that's a good question. I think if I had my way to do it over, I would have started with the IOMT program. I wish I found that when I was a younger clinician, just because I think the way Martin Langus, who's one of my mentors, he just explains patient care, patient management in a way that simplifies it. Because when you're a new therapist, everything's kind of coming at you 1,000 miles per hour, and you're just trying to get your feet underneath you. And he really shows it to make it a little less complicated for people, and kind of has a good algorithm for a thought process. So I cannot speak highly enough of that.
That's great. That was going to be my second question to talk about mentorship, but that's definitely a hot button for new staff that comes on board with us. How do you tackle well, first of all, who are your mentors, and what would you tell kind of a new grad coming out of school to look for in a mentor?
So I have a couple mentors, and as my career evolved, I still keep in touch with a bunch of them. My first one was Ian Hazelton. He's a teacher over at University of Hartford. I worked with him for a couple of years. He really got me on to like the OCS and continuing to grow, staying up with the latest information, just really knowledgeable about that. So he kind of gave me the drive to never stop learning. And I'm sure you've seen, it's like things are always changing. Like what we thought was good 10 years ago might not be as good now. And just staying up to with research is really important for our profession. A couple of my other mentors, we have Nicole McManus. She really took me under her wing, taught me more about like the IOMT method, showed me ways and to like really interact with people, and really got me like better with just talking to people and listening and connecting on a more personal level, which now looking back, it's probably half the battle with some of the PT that we go through. Then the third mentor would be Martin Langus. He's just the way he just describes the biomechanical models, he just really simplifies it, and he does an amazing job with that. He he does an excellent job, because I'll ask him a question and he'll explain it in such a way that it sounds so simple, and I'm like, I can't believe didn't think of that. And it's just like he just tells me, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta try that way, and I can't believe I didn't think of that part.
Yeah, isn't it cool when you get to a level that you can explain something so, it sounds so simple when it's really way more complicated than what
Right.
that delivery, you know.
I asked him, I'm like, how did you get so smart? Like, what do you do? I'm like, I feel like I'm all confused about everything. And he's like, Pete, there's just you get to new levels of confusion. Everyone's always still gets confused and everything. You just have different levels of it. I'm like, oh man, I'd love to be half as confused as you.
Yeah, yeah, right. I love that. So talk to me a little bit more about that, Pete. Right? Because I think there's, it's funny. I forget the name of the of the principle, but it's sort of like, as new grad, you kind of get to that peak at 3 years where you feel like you know everything, and then after
Yep.
that, you like dive into this trough of like I know nothing, and then at like 10 years, you're finally like you kind of are a little bit comfortable knowing what you don't know. Talk to us more about that, and what that's looked like in your career so far.
Exactly. So it's like, Sean, you hit it right on the head where it's like, I feel like as I've been further out of my career from starting, I'm more comfortable asking questions. I'm more humble, I'd say, in saying that I don't know everything. Where in the beginning, I wanted to know everything, and I thought I did know everything. But there's new things I'm learning every day, and I really think when I stop learning, that's when I'm done as a PT, because then the drive will be over, and then I won't want to do it anymore. But like you said, it's like you start off, you think you know everything, and then you're right off the cliff, and then what you kind of slowly build back up. But I think having great mentors around me, it's really been helpful with just asking questions, thinking of different perspectives. The method that I use, like, there's Syriacs, Maitland, Kenzie, those models. I use the Collinborn approach, which goes with a lot of like alleviating pain and provoking pain and trying to go along that methodology. So I'm not saying that one works well with everyone. You kind of have to, pick your patient and choose a method, but always having that framework to go back to is always helpful.
I think that's great. And I think that is perfect for my next question, which is, if you were to go back in time and give yourself, your 24-year-old new DPT self, any advice, what are like maybe two pieces of advice that you would give yourself?
And so I wish I found the residency earlier. I started in Connecticut, and there weren't too many residency programs around. As soon as I moved up to Massachusetts, it's just more availability to have like an orthopedic residency, because you went through one too as well. So it's like they're just way more available, and I wish I found one in Connecticut right to start my career. But if I had advice, I'd say get into a residency program way quicker than I did, because they kind of give you the answers to the test versus having to find out the answers by yourself.
Isn't that so true? And it's really just the stepping stones of being an orthopedic clinician is understanding the scope and the breadth of like what we're dealing with in the first place. And I think, both of the programs that we came from were great programs, but like there's no way that you can touch on every orthopedic condition. And even in residency, you don't get everything until you get out and practice. Like you see the combinations of different things. And but I couldn't agree more there, and just time too helps,
Oh,
just because like you can teach it to it, you can take the residency, but then like until you see it, it doesn't fully like click, or at least that's how it worked with me.
no, it's like you're 100% right. It's like until you create that patient database of like you've seen this before, sometimes it's like you just need different methods to click with the person and like how to explain things. And unless you
Yeah,
see it, you don't know how to do it.
right, for sure. What do you like most about being a physical therapist, Pete?
So I really like, honestly, getting to know the patients, connecting with them at more personal level. I ask them a lot of questions about, their life, not just their orthopedic conditions, but really getting to know the person, what they like to do, what they do for work, and then it's like where they need help to get to back to what they want to do. So it's really enjoyable when you see a person that can't do their hobby, can't do their job, can't do the things that they like to do, and helping them get
Mm,
back to that ability, because they appreciate it more than anything. And when those people come in, it just makes your job so worth it.
yeah, 100%. Or like that one Google review that's like, Pete helped me go skiing for the first time in 5 years, or help me swing a golf club, and like that's why we do our jobs. you
Yeah,
know?
they think that part of their life might be over with, and, like, they might not be able to do that again, and then we show them, like, how to get back there and, give them a new lease on life.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, Now, from what I understand, you've taken a fair amount of students in the past. What do you like most about teaching and the next generation of students?
So I like giving back to them. I always tell my students I hope to learn as much from them as they learn from me, because they're the ones that really have the up to date knowledge, up to date like the clinical education, or not clinical education, but the new clinical practice guidelines, and they're really up to date with the research with that. So I like to take a part of that from them and then combine it with my clinical expertise that I have in providing the best patient care that I can provide. And it just keeps me involved with the younger generation. And I figure if I surround myself with young people, I'll stay younger.
Love that. I couldn't agree more there either.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah. So talk to me about, obviously you're an outpatient clinician. I call you just like myself, an outpatient for lifer. But
Yep.
tell me about, we first met working at Park Ave in Arlington. Talk about the other practice settings that you worked in, and sort of why you gravitated toward orthopedics.
So it's like both of us tried to play a little bit of the game in the sniff setting, but like you said, we're outpatient. It's something a little bit different. It takes a different mindset to be really successful, and but I really like connecting with people to help them get to their goals. It's like the outpatient setting. There's nothing like it, where you're helping a wide variety of patients. It's like you might be getting like the pediatric ones, like 7, 8, 9 years old that want to just go out and have fun. You might be getting the teenager or the high school kid that needs to get back to the sports, the weekend warrior, the person that has a bad hip, bad knee that just needs to go be able to go up and down stairs again. So I like the variety that it gets throughout the day, and always being able to like change mind frame and really have to use critical thinking in our day-to-day like day-to-day activities. So it's like that way you always keep the mind going.
Yeah, I think the variety that we get in orthopedics is, it's unlike any other setting. I think, and they have to like you, because if they don't like you, then they're not coming back. And
Right.
I always say a little bit vice versa too. But
Yep.
that's that's funny. You touched on, Pete, chasing success as a physical therapist, and what does that look like for you in your career, and what do you feel like success looks like to you?
So that's a great question, Sean. There's a couple of different things where I like to put my success at, where it's like I want to be like most successful clinician, and maybe that means being able to get, I hate getting the alphabet soup after my name, but maybe that's what that means. So I was looking at that a while ago, and I was actually looking more towards my outcomes that I was giving people. So it's like we use photo here, and I was just tracking it over my last couple of years, and throughout these residencies that I've done, I've seen my outcome scores go up and up. So I think the residency programs really help with that. It's like I think a lot of our outpatient physical therapists, we all have a business mindset that we kind of want to work into. So I'd love to, get into the business adventure. Then I can spread the knowledge that I've used and seen what things have been successful to help teach other physical therapists to help grow our practice, grow our like footprint over people, and just show that some physical therapy would be helpful. Uh, One thing that I've been reading a lot about is just overall health outcomes, and how physical therapists can help with that, which I think is very interesting because I would love to be able to touch on more like metabolic diseases, like the diabetes, the heart disease, the cardio, or COPD, to just improve quality of life among people and just like lifespan.
Yeah, and it's, I was reading an article. I forget where it was, maybe in the New York Times, but they were talking about the trillions of dollars that we spend in our healthcare system, and really we spend it in a sick care system because we treat people who are sick. We don't prophylactically treat people who are healthy so that they don't become sick. And I couldn't agree more that I think that's where this field could go if we open up the doors and we have more forward thinking therapists like you to spread the word about what we do for patients with prediabetes and how we can avoid them potentially from living a worse quality of life, and uh, I think that's such a good point. Now, what does Pete Barone's career look like in 10 years?
10 years. I hope to still be playing the outpatient game. Um, it's like 10 years. Let's see. I hope to be having a successful clinic with, 3 or 4 people underneath me for staff. Um, and then, just I'd love to do a little bit more patient educate or PT education. So it's like going out, getting into spreading the knowledge of PT to other physical therapists and teaching them along the way. Just because I think giving back would be very rewarding to me.
Yeah, I love that. One of the big questions, in terms of education and mentorship, I get the mentorship question all the time. Hey, what should I look for in a mentor? You've also, it sounds like you've gotten some really great mentorship. um, how do you answer when when the new grads, or not always new grads, but people talk about outpatient and they talk about burnout? What does that mean to you, and how do you prevent burnout in your career?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that we really have to keep an eye out for as physical therapists, because it's a very tricky path to go, or easy path to go on. I think that's where maybe that therapist that is burned out didn't get the correct mentorship, as they're spinning their wheels because they don't know, just haven't been taught how to help people, haven't been taught how, like, the correct approach, how to and deal with like the emotional side of the physical therapy. And I think when they don't have the tools to equip themselves to handle that, that's when I think burnout happens. Because it's like, I'm sure you've seen too, it's like, you know outpatient can be busy, but there's times where it's like you have 10 patients and it feels like 100, and but then there are times where you have 100 patients and it only feels like 10. So you just got to learn how to you know have that balance where you're giving people good advice and treating them well, and not getting I don't want to say, so that way you can avoid the burnout.
Yeah. What have you used any coping strategies with success, or do you have any techniques that you share with other PTs or with students to to help prevent that?
So, it's like, everyone's got that one patient that, the Sunday scaries I always worry about. And, you're like, I don't really know how to treat this patient. And sometimes, this is where it might seem counterintuitive, but you got to dive in with that patient and get to like what their thoughts about physical therapy are, what their beliefs, what their expectations are. Because they might be expecting something that that we can't provide as a physical therapist, but you have to have that conversation with them to see what their expectations are. And then if you can kind of go about that conversation and talk to them about what physical therapy actually is, then it can make it easier for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's you know I think you touched on two really important things, right? So expectations, and I always ask, like, and it's funny because I went through a stage, Pete, where I didn't ask this question, which was, you know, like what are you looking to get back to, or like why are you like what are you hoping to gain from coming to PT? And like there were points where when I was busy early on in my career, I just write down like to return to prior level of function, right? Like
Right.
we all do. Like and don't, like, any new grad listening to this podcast, like you're gonna go through a stage where you just write to return to prior level of function, right? Like you will, and just don't, like, you will. But I always ask now, and I feel like it's exactly what you were just talking about, because you have to align expectations. Because if they say they want to play golf after a total knee in 8 weeks, like you're going to say, okay, like it's going to be more like 16, probably, right?
Yeah.
Um, or if they're like this crazy athlete and they're 40, like maybe that's a different scenario. But I think that's just such a key thing. And, and it's a great way to prevent burnout too, because if you're on the same page, then those people won't drive you nuts. But if they're, expecting an outcome that you're not able to deliver in a specific time frame, that can emotionally weigh on you, which is the second point that you were making, which is, that we're all psychologists at the end of the day too. We're physical therapists, but we're also, really, we need to be versed and have psychological strategies to deal with our patients, because if we don't, you're taking that stuff home to your family and to your friends and to your kids and your parents and loved ones, and they don't want to see that version of you, because I don't care who you talk. We're an empathetic profession, and when you're feeling all that all day long, you're gonna bring it home. So I think,
Yeah.
if I had better strategies when I was younger to be able to deal with that type of stress, I think that would have helped tremendously when I first came out.
So my students always say, it's like, because one of my questions is like, okay, what's your goal for physical therapy? And I'm sure you get this too. A person's like, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard. I just want to get back to that. But if you don't ask that question, you're never going to know. And it's like some
You have
person
to.
surprise it you with it. But all my students are like, yeah, you always ask that question. Why is that? I'm like, I just got to know what they want to do, because if I can assume that they want to go back to playing basketball, football, golf, or whatever, but unless I hear it from them, I don't know what they want.
And some people don't even care. Like some people, I used to think it was like always like get rid of pain. Like some
Yeah.
people don't even care about that. Some people like understand that they're always going to be in a little bit of pain, but they just want to be able to throw a baseball.
Yep.
And that's okay too. I think that that's, but that's, it's so funny. Like when you talk about that curve, like it's so true. That's one of those things where you're like, oh, this is dumb. Why am I asking this at every eval? And you're like, then you don't ask for a while, and then you're like, oh, well, now I know why I'm asking it.
Yeah, right. It's 16 weeks down the road, and like the patient and you are kind of like butting heads, and they're like, I should expect it to be perfect by now, and like I'm like,
Right.
wait, no, it's like you had a rotator cuff surgery, and you want to throw a baseball? It's like we
Yeah,
gotta talk.
probably not the best. Yeah, probably not
Yeah.
the best scenario. Now, Pete, let's picture you as, 0 to 3 years out of school. If you were to go back, and we already talked about like what advice you'd give yourself, but like if you were to make one change to your career, other than going to like a residency or whatever, if you were to make like one pivot, um, what would it be and why?
Oof. That's a good question. So, at first I tell myself it's like don't stress out too much about the little stuff. You know, I think that was one of the things where I was like over analyzing every patient that I was doing, every exercise, and I'm like, oh man, it's like. But I think you have to get through that point to be a successful therapist. I think, but if I had a career wise, what I would do is yeah, I would say like just probably don't stress out too much about every little thing with every patient, because I think that really weighed on me in the beginning, where I was like I felt like I didn't know anything. I felt like I was a novice, and but it's like when you get out of school, it's like you have your doctorate, and it's like you're very well versed in physical therapy, so you're the expert, and people are coming to you for advice. So um, I think the stress level that I put myself on, that was one thing I would probably change a little bit. But I think like the residency program would be the way to go with that. And just instead of doing more residency early on rather than, doing like the weekend courses. The weekend courses are great, and I think they're great tools that they provide. It's like the BFR, the dry needling, the kinesio tape, but maybe spend a little bit more time with the residency programs than those courses earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. I think it's almost, you talk about gathering all those tools in the tool belt when you first graduate, like the trineedling and the Graston and, whatever else, the KT taping. But like, if you don't know when to employ those tools,
Mm.
and that's where, to me, like just the residency helped me, like just understand diagnoses. And then once
Yeah.
I knew the diagnoses and I knew kind of like outcome wise, like where they kind of landed, it just made it easier to do the job.
Yep.
Um, cool. All right. Favorite movie?
Oh, favorite movie. We're gonna go with Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh yeah, it's like I'll watch that one anytime it's on.
I
It's
know
like
that's an all star. See you later, G. That's an all star. That's a top 10 for me too. I think.
yeah, just like one of those ones where if I need a stupid laugh or something like that, it always helps out.
Who is the guy in that movie? It's Oh God, what's his name?
What was it?
He's in like this. Is he in like This Is 42?
Was it Russell Brand or Jason Segel? Oh, Paul Rudd probably.
Jason. Well, Paul Rudd was definitely in that, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's Jason Segel, right?
yeah,
Yeah, he's hilarious. That dude is so
yeah,
funny.
yeah. It's like, and
That's the
then
one where he's like he write. It's like the vampire thing on the
yeah,
piano. Yeah,
it
that's
was like
awesome.
so like there was one day I was asking patients, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like I don't know, we were doing something stupid, but I'm like, oh yeah, it's like let's get songs with our names in it. And one patient came in and she was like, Pete, I got the song for you. And it's when he's singing like, Peter, you suck, Peter, you whoa, where's this coming from?
Yeah, I love that. Favorite concert?
Favorite concert? Let's see. I'll have to go back. It was my first concert, Blink 182, so that was a good one to start off with.
Where was that?
It was back at home in Buffalo at Darien Lake.
Okay,
I think I was a little young. I was in fourth grade when I went to it.
okay.
Yeah,
Just a
somehow
little.
my friend's dad was like, "Oh, this would be a good concert to bring the kids to," and I learned a lot of new words that day, I think.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Uh, Mantra that Pete Barone lives by.
Uh, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Um, Favorite piece of mentorship advice
Oof.
that
Okay.
you've received?
That I received. So, mm, the first one that comes to mind, I don't know if it's a good one, but it's let's see. So, never take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Well, great. I mean, I think that just about wraps it up, Pete. I appreciate you taking the time today. That was
Thanks
awesome.
for having me. I always love chatting with you, Sean. You know, it's like it's good to have you pick my brain and learn as much from you as hopefully you got from me.
Yeah, no, this is going to be great, and I think you're going to. And the goal of this is to to affect a tremendous amount of lives, and hopefully impart some knowledge in the newer generation of PTs. So
Perfect.
thanks again for the time, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
All right. Take care, Sean.
Awesome, Pete. Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye.